In the 1980s and 90s, communities across America, particularly in urban areas, were devastated by a flood of drugs that swept through the streets. But let's not get it twisted. The drugs didn't just appear out of nowhere, they were brought in. There's a dark truth that we need to acknowledge and confront. The U.S. government, under various administrations, played a role in bringing drugs into our neighborhoods, devastating black and brown communities in the process. And after dropping those drugs into our hoods, they came back with the hammer. Harsh laws that disproportionately punished our people for the addiction and crimes that followed, leaving lasting scars. The crack epidemic was not just a health crisis, it was a weapon of mass destruction aimed squarely at communities of color. The government, through agencies like the CIA, allowed and even facilitated the importation of crack cocaine into the United States. The result? An explosion of addiction, crime, and violence in cities like Los Angeles, New York, and right here in Houston. But instead of addressing the root causes, like poverty, lack of education, and unemployment, Congress chose to criminalize an entire generation. Enter the 1994 crime bill, authored by then-Senator Joe Biden. This bill was the largest crime bill in the history of the United States, and it brought with it a wave of punitive measures that would forever change the landscape of American justice. So, what did the 1994 crime bill do exactly? It introduced harsh sentencing laws like the 3 strikes rule, which mandated life sentences for repeat offenders, even for nonviolent crimes. It expanded mandatory minimum sentences, particularly for drug offenses, leading to a dramatic increase in the prison population, especially among minorities. Most infamously, it contributed to the mass incarceration of black and brown people across the country, tearing families apart. Between 1994 and the early 2000s, incarceration rates skyrocketed, reaching unprecedented levels. The bill funded the construction of new prisons and the hiring of 100,000 more police officers nationwide. But this increase in law enforcement presence, combined with aggressive policing tactics, only deepened the mistrust between communities of color and the police, leading to more tension. Fast forward to 2018. Donald Trump signed the First Step Act into law, a bipartisan effort aimed at reforming the criminal justice system. The First Step Act was a direct response to the failures of the crime bill. It sought to undo some of the damage by focusing on reducing sentences for non-violent drug offenders, promoting rehabilitation, and offering inmates a second chance at life. But perhaps the most significant impact of the First Step Act was its focus on rehabilitation. Inmates who participated in educational, vocational, and drug treatment programs could earn time credits toward early release. The act recognized that people are capable of change, and it gave them the tools they needed to rebuild their lives. The story of these two laws is a tale of two approaches, one bad and one good. The 1994 crime bill under Joe Biden was about punishment, about locking people away and throwing away the key. The First Step Act under Donald Trump, on the other hand, is about redemption, rehabilitation, and reformation. It's about recognizing that people make mistakes, but they also deserve the opportunity to make things right. For those affected by the harsh realities of the 1994 crime bill, there is hope and a number of paths to redemption. One path is our 10-step do-it-yourself, Erase Your Criminal Record Guide. Visit eraseyourrecord.com to start your journey to a clean slate today, and take the first step towards reclaiming your future. Now, as we look back on the legacy of these laws, it's important to remember the lives that were affected. The families torn apart, the children who grew up without parents, the communities ravaged by crime and incarceration, and the neighborhoods that have struggled to rebuild. But it's also important to acknowledge the steps forward, the progress that has been made. The First Step Act is just that, a first step towards meaningful change. If you have family or friends who came up during the 1980s and 1990s and they were initially incarcerated during this time period, and still today deal with addiction and incarceration, they are a prime example of the devastating effects of the 1994 crime bill that never gave them any reform. There's still much work to be done to reform our criminal justice system, to ensure fairness and justice for all, and to heal the wounds that have been inflicted on our communities, bringing hope and unity. If you or someone you know has been affected by these laws, know that there is hope. Reform is possible, and together, we can build a more just and equitable system for all. Thank you for watching, and let's continue the fight for justice. Remember, justice isn't about locking people up, it's about setting people free. Follow and subscribe to Legal Gangsta TV for more content.